Alright, so here we have the valve body off the Dodge 47 RE, and this is the same transmission that had the kind of odd drivability symptoms reported in second and fourth gear. We did the teardown inspection, could not find any smoking gun or direct cause for either of those driver complaints. So what we're going to do is take apart this valve body and test it on the Sonic's vacuum test machine. And how I do that is I take the valve body assembly apart completely. In other words, all the valves out, everything going through, each of the castings cleaned, and then reassembled as is, and then I'll test. I don't test the valve body when it's still dirty and laden with old transmission fluid, primarily because I don't want any crud or sludge or grit that might or might not be in each of these bores to color the results. In other words, throw them off. So anyway, these valve bodies are somewhat complicated. They're multi-level, multi-layer. You have a lower valve body, an upper valve body, a transfer or channel plate, and then you have two spacer plates, one in between the transfer plate and the lower valve body, and then you have another one between the transfer plate and the upper valve body. So a lot going on, a whole lot to deal with. So this is considered, this is going to be considered your lower valve body. Okay, this side here that faces you when you're looking up at the transmission with the pan off of it. Okay, this is the lower valve body. This is going to be the upper valve body. So we want to start with the upper valve body, and then once everything is off in terms of these two plates here, your rooster comb manual valve and parking rod assembly, you're going to flip everything over and you're going to start working on the lower valve body, taking all those bolts out. Every single one of these fasteners is 25 Torx, or Torx 25. And so that's basically how you want to approach the disassembly. Alright, so with all that said, let's begin. First thing I'll mention is that you're going to have your detent ball and your detent spring for your rooster comb. Okay, that's going to go in this location right here. And there's a special tool that is available to facilitate efficient installation of this ball and spring, such that it makes it a lot easier to seat and position the rooster comb, because the tool holds the spring and ball in place. And then once you have the rooster comb settled in, you have your manual valve engaged with the manual valve actuating rod or linkage arm. Then you just simply remove the tool, and the ball and spring are in place along your detents on your rooster comb. Okay, so you're going to have a seal here that'll come in the kit. You'll just replace that. Okay, and then you can leave this entire assembly as is. There's no reason to disconnect anything unless you're actually replacing the valve body itself. Okay, so here's your throttle valve actuator arm and your main throttle valve. Okay, you can start taking the rest of this stuff off. Okay, this bolt here that holds your case connector in place. Okay, Torx 25 on your little case connector to case connector to lower valve body bolt. At this point, you can take out the manual valve as well. Okay, this is going to be your hold down plate for the upper valve body side of the channel plate. Alright, so first things first, we have our governor pressure solenoid and transducer along with the solenoid block. So these you can upgrade to a billet version that will accept a GM 4L60 or 4L80E late model electronic pressure control solenoid, and that will improve line pressure characteristics inside the unit, especially those that are used in either high performance or heavy duty applications. Okay, note the length of the bolts. These were a little loose. Could be that somebody may have attempted to service this thing at some point. And then for your transducer, just going to separate it from below. And everything else comes off. Alright, next you're going to have your shift solenoid block. You got a bolt here, and then you have another one right here, and another one right here. Again, these bolts are loose. So already I may have found a potential source of the drivability symptoms. Alright, so that's your wiring harness. The whole thing just comes right off. Bolts loose like this, that could be enough to cause erratic line pressure issues throughout the transmission really, but particularly in either second or fourth gear, you know, over and above everything else. So interesting to say the least. All right. All right, now I want to flip the valve body over so that we can kind of knock back these tabs here, and then once they're out of the way we can get at these bolts. Okay, you just want to be careful with the feed pipe. You don't want to break it, obviously. and then the feed pipe just comes out. Alright, now what we're going to do is take loose all the bolts that hold your lower valve body onto everything else. We're going to take those loose so that we can remove the lower valve body. I mean, this particular socket fits these bolts nice and tight. Okay, for your bolt sizes, just want to make sure that they're all free. Okay, you're going to have your housing here. Alright, that's going to be mated to this lower valve body assembly. And you also have your bracket for the pressure regulator complex. So this is your pressure regulator valve and your switch valve. So here's the PR valve, here's the switch valve. As you can see, that has to come off. So, I'm going to take this loose. Okay, notice this bolt's a little bit longer right here. I mean, you could tell because the casting is a little bit higher, but just know that's where that bolt came from. And that will allow you to free up your lower valve body assembly from everything else. Alright, now you're going to have your channel plate, and then this is the spacer plate that sits between the lower valve body and the channel plate. Alright, looks unremarkable other than the fact that it's dirty. Okay, here's your number 10 check ball. It's going to be 3/16. And that's 1996 and up. Alright, now just go ahead and separate your channel plate from the upper valve body. And there you'll have an unobstructed view of all the rest of your check balls. And so the housings are, for the most part, separated other than the channel plate and the main spacer plate. So here you have your filter, your hold down plate. We'll take the hold down plate off, and there's a couple check balls in there. Looks unmodified to me. I don't think anyone's been in this valve body except for possibly the governor pressure solenoid area. So here are the aforementioned check balls here in the channel plate, or transfer plate, excuse me. This is referred to as a transfer plate. Got here, you got one there. Alright, so now that all the individual castings have been divorced from each other, we can start taking the valve trains out. Alright, so let me straighten this bench out and then we'll go ahead and resume with valve extraction, and I'll cover the valve trains. And once everything's out, we're going to clean everything up, put the castings in the hot tank, wipe down the spacer plates, clean off all the valve trains, all the different little parts. And then we're going to put this whole assembly back together insofar as its constituent valve housings, so that we can test them on the Sonex vac test machine and confirm or deny the, I guess, potential for contribution to the drivability symptoms that the valve body may have made. And it's got an awkward way of saying we're going to confirm or deny if the valve body was responsible for what the driver reported to the shop. Okay, let's figure out what valve body I'm going to do. Upper or lower? Start with the lower. Alright, get a towel. Alright, so we have our fourth accumulator housing, and that also serves as a cover for some valve trains. I will put a exploded diagram up from the ATSG manual showing exactly what the valves are and what bores, so you can see as we go through each of these castings, and be no mystery versus me trying to tell you and you trying to remember everything. Alright, so for the accumulator housing, you're just going to take off your 5 Torx 25 screws. And these are going to be, I guess some of them are going to be loose because I actually had this off during the teardown video of this transmission. I wanted to see if the accumulator spring had broken in half or something, because that could explain irregularities in fourth gear, the 3/4 upshift. And then I just simply put it back in its location. So, spring's in good shape. It's general best practice to replace these springs though, because it's not entirely unheard of for them to want to break. Alright, then you have some valve trains in here. So we'll just start this side. Alright, there is spring tension, so you want to keep your hand on it just like this. All these bolts are the same. Okay, what I'm doing is making sure that you could actually see what it is that I'm doing and talking about. But this is anodized aluminum, not steel. Alright, now we're going to take off the accumulator housing. Again, spring tension. So this went here, and you had this here. So if we were to orient these relative to these valves, they would be up here. Alright. Now you have this valve train here. Alright, that's technically the way they go. Okay, so we have the lower valve body empty. And the casting itself is now empty. So let me reposition everything. We're going to get the stuff out of the way, and then we'll take apart the upper valve body assembly. And that has the boost and pressure regulator valve and switch valve in it. Okay, if you want to take another look at the check balls, okay, just note where they go. Again, I will superimpose a screenshot or a image of the valve body diagram. It will show the check balls in their respective locations. Alright, so this is your main pressure regulator valve here. And then you have your switch valve. So you have your kind of inboard bolt here, and then you have your top through bolt. Take the top bolt off first. And then go ahead and take off your last bolt. And just try to keep everything under control because everything will want to fly out. Okay, so that's shorter. This is a little bit longer. And I have not touched this screw. There's a procedure for setting your throttle pressure, because that's basically what that is. It's like a throttle pressure stop, I guess. And that procedure is in the ATSG manual. So when I put this valve body back together, I'll walk through it, but for now, just know that, you know, it exists. Nasty. Alright, next, you could do whichever valve trains you want. And we'll take the top cover plates off. Alright, a little bit of spring tension. Not much, just a little bit. Okay, notice the difference. It's got a groove a little bit longer, this one does not. This one went here, this one went there. Alright, now we're going to take the plate off. Okay, this valve and spring is held in by an E-clip. Alright, battery was literally about to die, so I had to take a minute to change it out. But you have your E-clip here, and so all you're going to do is just carefully pry it away. It's kind of awkward, you know, just because it's under so much spring tension. So you see you have your spring seat. And then the valve on the opposite side. Alright, so then you just have these cover plates here with this, and that's basically it. Last but not least, oop. Okay, again, under a little bit of spring tension. Okay, the housing is finally empty. So we have the upper and lower casting, the 3/4 accumulator housing, the transfer plate, both spacer plates, the solenoid housing for governor pressure solenoid, feed pipe, all 10 check balls, all of our valve trains, our accumulator and spring, our parking linkage rooster comb, manual valve, throttle actuator arm, speed sensor, which has nothing to do with the valve body, and frankly the neutral safety switch doesn't either. And then we have our detent ball and spring. So like I said, quite a lot to these valve bodies. This is the norm for this general family of transmissions, all the way back to the 904s and 727s, and they just got more intricate as time went on. So I'm going to get all this stuff cleaned up. I'm going to reassemble everything, at least insofar as the individual housings, so that we can test all this stuff on the Sonics machine and see what kind of vacuum each of these circuits is generating. That'll be in part 2 of this video. Part 1 will just focus on the disassembly so you can see how it has, all come apart. Otherwise the video would be way too long, and nobody wants to watch a 3-4 hour long video or whatever. Alright, stay tuned for part 2.